The Galactic Council's diplomatic accord was absolute. No biological companions were permitted within the sacred halls of interstellar negotiation. For 3,000 cycles, this rule had maintained order among the 47 member species, preventing the chaos that emotional attachments might bring to delicate proceedings. Ambassador Chen Wei knew this. Every human diplomat knew this. Yet as she sat in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge, she couldn't bring herself to care about regulations. The tiny orange kitten in her lap purred softly, its whiskers twitching as it dreamed. "You're going to get me exiled to the outer rim," she whispered to the sleeping creature. The kitten, whom she'd named Copernicus after finding him abandoned near the spaceport, simply stretched and settled deeper into her warmth. The next morning brought the inevitable. As Chen prepared for the most crucial negotiation in recent galactic history, the Zephyrian Empire's proposed expansion into neutral territories, her aide Marcus burst through her door. "Ma'am, we have a problem. Quarantine sensors detected unauthorized biological matter in your quarters." Chen's heart sank. "How long do we have?" "Council enforcement is already en route. They'll be here within the hour." She looked down at Copernicus, who had awakened and was now batting playfully at her sleeve. The kitten's amber eyes held no understanding of the political catastrophe he represented. Without humanity's voice in these negotiations, the Zephyrian Empire would steamroll over 36 smaller worlds. Millions would become refugees. "There's only one option," Chen said finally. "We proceed as planned." Marcus stared at her. "Ma'am, if they discover—" "They won't," Chen interrupted, gently scooping Copernicus into her diplomatic bag. "The council chamber's bioscanners only activate during formal sessions. We'll be in preliminary discussions for hours." An hour later, Chen sat across from Supreme Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. The reptilian being's scales shifted from deep purple to aggressive crimson as he outlined his species' territorial demands. Around the circular table, representatives from dozens of worlds watched nervously. "The neutral zone contains 17 systems that could serve our expansion needs," Vextar hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air. "These worlds are underutilized. We will make them productive." "Productive for whom?" Chen countered. "Those systems contain mining colonies, research outposts, and agricultural settlements. Millions of beings call them home." Vextar's laugh was like grinding stones. "Weak species. They lack the strength to hold what they claim. The strong take from the weak. This is universal law." Chen felt Copernicus shift slightly in her bag. The kitten had been remarkably quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. She pressed on with her arguments, citing treaty law and interstellar precedents, but Vextar remained unmoved. As the hours dragged on, other diplomats began voicing support for the Zephyrian position. The Empire's military might was undeniable, and many species preferred accommodation to annihilation. Then disaster struck. Copernicus, perhaps seeking more comfortable accommodations, poked his tiny head out of the diplomatic bag. Several delegates gasped. The blue-skinned Andorian representative pointed with a trembling finger. "Violation. The human brings forbidden biological matter to sacred proceedings." Vextar's eyes narrowed to slits. "The humans show their true nature. Lawbreakers who care nothing for galactic order. How can we trust beings who cannot follow simple rules?" Chen's heart pounded as murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Her career was finished, but worse, humanity's credibility lay in ruins. Without their voice, the smaller worlds would fall. But then something unexpected happened. Copernicus, completely oblivious to the political chaos he'd created, began to purr. The sound resonated in the chamber's acoustics, a gentle rumble that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. Several delegates leaned forward, curious. The kitten stretched, yawned, and then did what kittens do best. He began to play, batting at a stylus that had rolled onto the floor, pouncing on his own tail, and finally, in a moment that would be recorded in galactic history, he wandered directly toward the terrifying Supreme Commander Vextar. The chamber fell silent. Zephyrians were apex predators, their reflexes honed by millions of years of evolution. Vextar's claws extended involuntarily as the small creature approached. But Copernicus showed no fear. He simply sat down at Vextar's feet and looked up with those amber eyes, head tilted in innocent curiosity. Then he did something that no being had ever dared to do to a Zephyrian Supreme Commander. He rubbed against Vextar's leg and began to purr. The change in Vextar was immediate and visible. His aggressive crimson scales slowly shifted to a soft gold, a color that Chen's xenobiology training told her indicated confusion and wonder. The Supreme Commander's claws retracted. His rigid posture relaxed. What is this creature? Vextar asked, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. A kitten, Chen said quietly. On Earth, we call them cats. They're companions. Not servants or tools, but friends who choose to share our lives. Vextar reached down with one massive claw and gently scratched behind Copernicus's ears. The kitten's purr intensified, and something extraordinary happened. Vexitar's scales began shifting through colors Chen had never seen in Zephyrian documentation. Soft blues, gentle greens, warm yellows. In all my cycles, Vextar whispered, I have never encountered a being that approached without fear, without agenda, without desire for anything except companionship. He looked up at Chen with new eyes. Your species forms bonds with creatures that offer nothing but affection? Chen nodded. We believe that strength isn't just about conquest. Sometimes it's about protection, nurturing, caring for those who can't defend themselves. The Supreme Commander continued to pet Copernicus, his expression thoughtful. Around the table, other delegates watched in amazement as the galaxy's most feared military leader displayed a gentleness no one had imagined possible. Perhaps, Vextar said finally, the humans understand something about true strength that we have forgotten. When the formal session convened later that day, the Zephyrian Empire withdrew their territorial demands. Instead, they proposed something unprecedented, a joint protection initiative for the neutral zone, with humanity and the Empire working together to shield vulnerable worlds from aggressive expansion. The Council, still reeling from the day's revelations, quietly amended their diplomatic protocols. Biological companions, the new regulation stated, were permitted if they served the cause of interstellar understanding. As Chen prepared to leave the station, Copernicus safely tucked in his travel carrier, she reflected on the day's events. A single small creature, guided by nothing more than instinct and trust, had achieved what decades of careful diplomacy could not. Sometimes she realized the greatest strength was simply the courage to show vulnerability, to extend friendship without reservation, and to believe that even the fiercest hearts could be touched by genuine affection. The kitten that broke an empire had taught the galaxy a new definition of power, one that came not from conquest, but from connection. And in the vastness of space, that was perhaps the most human lesson of all.